Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're going to take another minute and make sure everyone gets into the meeting, and then we'll get started. Thanks so much. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We have a lot to discuss today, and so thanks for taking a little bit of time to talk about the supportive services. This is being recorded, and so just be aware that you will be recorded if you ask any questions. And also, this will be available for you to review again. So that's always kind of nice. Um, so to kick off, my name is Ilona Nagy, and I am the HOME-ARP manager. And it has been my lovely job and opportunity and great honor to steer this little ship. And I'm going to hand it over to my other two compatriots here, who are, or should I say, sailors on the boat going with the. Um, so I'm going to turn it over to Jody real quick to introduce herself, and then Candace.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jody Key, and I'm a HOME-ARP specialist.
Good afternoon, I apologize. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Candace Spicer, and I am a home art specialist as well.
Thanks, guys. And eventually, a big part of this is going to be Candace's position. She's new, and so, but because she's new to the team, I'm going to be taking this on for now, and then we'll be moving forward with more opportunities coming up. So just also know that the chat is your friend. So both Jody and Candace are going to be kind of looking at the chat as well as the Q&A. We're able to stop mid, conversation around any questions that you might have, and there will be opportunities to ask questions throughout as well. So we have it broken up a little bit, and so if you have anything that pops up, just go ahead and either put in the chat, Q&A, or you could even raise your hand. Okay, thanks so much. Okay, now we're going to overview just the HOME-ARP specifics. Y'all should be pretty familiar with this particular thing by now, is my guess. You've all probably seen this over and over again. This is where we come from. We are affiliated with HOME, and it's American Rescue Plan funding that's been attached to the HOME grant. Added non-congregate shelter and supportive services, and we're talking about supportive services today, to the funding. And so it's all about building capacity in our communities. And the really kind of interesting part about this funding is that the focus is for individuals who are homeless and at risk of homelessness, have domestic violence or trafficking or fleeing, those two things plus, and severely housed, cost burden in their rent. And so the main programs that we're focusing on are non-congregate shelters, supportive services, and rental housing. And so we are doing some agency capacity building through our Supportive Housing Institute. And if you'd like to know more about that, just go ahead and reach out to us and we'll get you some information on that. So some details about the HOME-ARP supportive services. the focus of the supportive services, and we've been told from our HUD TA, is that unless it is specific to the service, it is to serve all 4 qualifying populations. And I know you're like, but there's 5 little people there, Ilona. The last 2, keeping households from returning to homelessness, and those who are at 50% or more of their monthly income, putting towards housing costs, are considered the same qualifying populations. So just be aware that that those 2 are connected, okay? So I just put this together today, so just know that this may shift over time. We're getting some feedback, but we felt like this is a good thing to get started with. This is really the HOME-ARP process for all of our programs before someone enters into service. And the reason that I'm really kind of showing this is because it has been said over and over and over again, and Jody, you can back me up on this one from all the clinics we have watched from HUD, that the referral process is really important, as well as the eligibility process. And so they want to make sure who, as far as the marketing goes to other agencies who know people who may use the services, that's a really important part. And it is in the documentation that we're going to ask from you. So that is why we are going to be talking a little bit about that. And this kind of just explains the process. So if you receive an award or are selected, that is the top left-hand, I think it may be left-hand corner from where you all are sitting. At least I'm hoping so, with the little diamonds there. And so it is your job to affirmatively market and tell agencies around you who serve the 4 qualifying populations that you may have something available that they can use. And so then those agencies, and it may even be internal, so it doesn't have to be a separate agency, then refers people to that particular service. And so that's this little, I probably should have a pointer here. Sure. So this little guy here, the agency refers the household or service or self-referral to the HOME-ARP activity. And that could be housing, non-congregate shelter, or supportive services. Then as the awardee provider, it's your job to determine their qualifying population eligibility. So we have forms that are going to be coming out that you can look at in order to make sure that the person qualifies, and you get all of that verification and documentation stating that it's and all the backup that they meet one of the 4 qualifying populations. And then the person gets technically supposed to be put on a wait list. Now we understand that there is going to probably be, especially for supportive services, you're going to be knocking them out as people are coming in. There's not going to be a wait list issue. But that is something that is mentioned all the time to make sure that everything is equal and equitable. So just know that there may be a request later on to make sure that we are seeing your list of who has approached you for services and their place on the list for receiving them. And then from there, you provide that household the HOME-ARP activity, and then they go ahead and receive it. So they could either move into the rental housing, the non-congregate shelter, or receive that supportive service. So that's kind of a general idea, but it really highlights the affirmatively marketing to agencies, ensuring that the qualifying population is eligible, and then the wait list to activity process. So we just wanted to make sure that this was available to you to kind of give you a visual of steps to take. Okay. So for this particular grant, at minimum, we are wanting to do $100,000 per grant and able to do more. The funding is to be, the whole funding, we'd like to have all of our supportive services spent way before 2030, if that's at all possible. But that's kind of like the end date that we need to kind of have everything spent by, so we can start moving toward closing everything out by the end of 2030, which is when HUD needs the information. So depending on what you're asking for, this timing may be reduced in your written, if you're selected, the timing may be reduced in your written agreement, just to make sure that that things are getting spent and are happening quickly and moving forward. And so we are also wanting to do grants that are, that word just escaped me. Not it is a reimbursable grant, but to reallocate every year to it'll come to me as we move on. So we're wanting to recontract every year if there's an option. So if we do like a 2 or 3 year contract, it would be a 1-year contract that would just be re-upped every year in order to make sure that things are moving forward. So, and our legal department doesn't let us do agreements and contracts more than 1 year. So we would just reinitiate it every year. And so if it's $100,000 and we give you a two-year contract kind of thing, it would be $50,000 and then just re-up for the other 50 the second year. Okay. And so that should all be really shown in your budget, just what you want to be spending and what it looks like over even a multi-year process. All supportive services applications should meet the following criteria. Funds used to provide supportive services with a focus to serve all relevant qualifying populations of the HOME-ARP program, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. And that DC and the service provider will establish a written agreement and contract for funding to ensure program compliance, record keeping, and payment processes related to service provision. HOME-ARP services to be provided must be predetermined and stated in the written agreement. So we have a lot of options for you, but we need to have a contract around those. So if you, for example, if you are awarded funding for rental assistance, but decide to start doing childcare, we will not pay you back for anything spent on childcare. And yes, I said the funds are reimbursable. So it is important for you to have the funding up front, if that's at all possible. If that's something, we are wanting to expand this to new agencies. Oops, sorry. I did not mean to move that forward. And so like it says here in number 2, new projects that have not previously received a DCA award but demonstrate capacity to provide housing stability supportive services. So it really is that capacity piece. So as far as being able to get the money ahead of time, our home grants are for the most part reimbursable. And that's mainly a HUD thing. If there's something that needs to shift because you'd like to, if your agency shows that you have the capacity to be able to handle this kind of grant, and there may be a need to have the money ahead of time or get started with funding and then have it be reimbursable, we may be able to negotiate that with you. But for the most part, that's going to be very small. It's not going to be something that happens often. And for most of the grants, they will be reimbursable. So just be aware of that. By the way, I feel like Jody, am I talking loudly enough? I feel like may not be projecting like I should. Okay, thanks.
Good.
So DCA will use the HOME-ARP supportive service dollars to support 2 types of applications primarily, and that's the expansion of existing emergency solutions grant projects within the HOME-ARP regulations. And then, like I said, those new projects that have not previously received a DCA award but demonstrate capacity to provide housing stability supportive services. So we're not trying to be we need to be rigid enough. But if like I said, an agency out there that really has some good capacity, but there may need to be a few things that may need to be altered, we're not opposed to that. We just, for the most part, we do need to do reimbursable grants. So I hope that all makes sense. So eligible program participants. So supportive services may be provided to individuals and families who meet the definition of a qualifying household under, and this is in our notice, our regulation of the regulation notice, who are not already receiving these services through another program. The reason I state that is because I wanted you all to know that this is in our regulations. And this is how it's stated, that they may be provided to individuals and families who meet the definition of a QP, which under 4A is the QP definitions. It's a really long list of this notice, and who are not already receiving these services through another program. Okay. So that is the biggest piece that you need to be aware of. And so make sure that that is a part of your plan. Um, the next thing, is that if a person, so for example, if a person is homeless, uh, then the person is eligible to be provided the supportive services as McKinney-Vento supportive services for the costs allowable in the eligible cost section below. So the McKinney-Vento services are homeless services. So therefore, that's what I was meaning earlier as far as for the best population to serve. So we cannot limit population. So for example, um, for this particular funding, we can't limit it to say veterans. We cannot serve just veterans. Um, and everyone in the community would need to get served with this particular grant money. However, if there is a homeless service. So, for example, helping someone like a rapid rehousing situation, that family would technically need to be homeless in order to get rapid rehousing. So that's that kind of idea that but for example, like childcare, whether they're housed or unhoused, that is something that could be used by the whole community. Okay. So that's something to consider. Okay. So next, if a person is housed and the supportive services are intended to help the program participant regain stability in the program participant's current permanent housing or move into a permanent housing to achieve stability in that housing, then the person is eligible for homelessness prevention services for the costs allowable in what they're calling the eligible cost sections below. That's, I added that. So this is all directly out of the notice, by the way, that we go by. That's all of our regulations. And then another example is housing counseling services may be provided regardless of whether a person is homeless or currently housed. So when looking at the population that you are serving, you also need to look at the service that you'd like to provide because those two are complementary. And so you may not, you may want, I hope you want to serve all four qualifying populations, but the service that you're wanting to provide may not be really eligible for all four qualifying populations. However, if you just want to serve women or children, if you just want to serve people in your agency, if you just want to serve those types of groups, that is something you cannot do. So, that's the preference and limitation piece. And I know that we have questions in the chat. And I'm sorry, I'm also taking some notes because it's also making me think of some things that we may need to add. Is it strictly money that you have to have, or is it possible to have collateral that proves you have access to what is requested? That's a great question. Well, let me put it this way. If you essentially a reimbursable grant is your agency would pay for whatever the service is, and then we would reimburse you those costs. So it could look like many different things. So food is a part of that. So we would need, so like, for example, if you're already, if you already have like um, a, credit with, not credit, but an account, that's the word I'm looking for, with like Second Harvest. And you are able to purchase after everything's signed with your written agreement, food that's on that credit, and then you get the bill from that, and then move it on to, what is HOME-ARP. I'm pretty sure that could be possible. I'm not definitively sure, but that would be kind of like an example of being able to give those services. Or if you are doing case management and you have enough in your accounting to pay for your staff, and then we would reimburse those costs for your staff. But if you're handing, and giving out like rent assistance or utility deposits, those types of things, then you would probably, that would be something that we'd reimburse you. So you would have to give out that cash, that money, and then we would reimburse you for what you gave. But again, the record keeping is really important with regards to that. If our agency currently serves just 2 counties, would we have to serve anyone in Georgia with this grant? That's a good question. Okay, so with the location situation, serving people just in your county, if there's someone from another county that comes and requests the funding or whatever you're serving, it should still be open. I'd have to double check that in our regulations. And Chris, we have questions from our webinar yesterday too. So, Christy, we're going to have to get back to you on that. I'm pretty sure you'd have to serve them no matter what county they're from. And the reason I say that is this, for rental housing, okay, what HUD wanted to know is that a unit is available for all 4 qualifying populations throughout the state, okay? So if we were able to get our preferences and or limitations that we're going to be requesting from HUD in the future, and we have a property in North Georgia for people who are homeless and unhoused, we have another, location in like Columbus, for those who are at risk of homelessness, which is QP2, or QP3 for those fleeing domestic violence is in Brunswick, and then QP4 is in Waycross. Okay, let's just say we have very interesting limitations throughout the state. Technically, HUD would be okay with that because we are offering a unit for all 4 QPs throughout the state. Now, they may be 5 hours away from each other, but it's still being offered throughout the state, and there's access of sorts to that type of unit. So HUD likes to make sure that there is access to services, and that, and so if you're offering a service, from what I understand, based on that, you would have to offer it to people outside of your 2 counties. But we'll have to dig a little bit deeper if there's a location requirement and limitation based on location, but I don't believe you can limit it if you're only served 2 counties. I know it was a really long explanation, but I'm going to take a note of that. So when you guys see me writing here, it's just because I'm taking notes and thinking of things while we're talking, which has been really, really great. And thanks, Candace. I appreciate it. Okay, so what is the turnaround time for reimbursement? Okay. The goal of the turnaround time is going to be, I believe, within a month. Okay, but that's also receiving your invoices, and it's the drawdown. I'm going to have to double check with that because I know each of the programs have been different. I know ESG has had, I'm pretty sure the turnaround time is right around a month for them. For us, we're going to try and do something fairly similar to that. However, I do know for building, okay, for actual building of buildings, it's going to be at every quarter. So once 25% is complete, then we can reimburse. 50% complete, then we can reimburse, those types of things. So I don't believe that's the same way with supportive services, though. We haven't kind of completely structured the reimbursable piece because we've had to pivot, and we're actually releasing this a little bit earlier than what we intended. So we're getting all these things together kind of as we're moving along. So, but that information is going to come out fairly soon, and we're going to note that. Is there a match requirement? No, there is no match requirement for this funding. However, when I go through the budget, you'll see that a match is optional. If you have a match, it just shows that there is additional capacity in your agency. And so, that's a really great thing. And so, but there is not a match requirement for this funding, not like other federal programs that y'all have maybe looked into. So that's a good thing. Would we be partners with the developers of different housing developments, or are clients able to choose their housing? They're totally able to choose their housing. This particular funding is separate from all the different developments that we're doing right now. However, for those of you who may be applying for the rental housing NOFO that's due on Monday, and or the non-congregate shelter NOFO that's due, that'll be out probably Monday or Tuesday of next week. That is also including additional supportive services funding if you want to apply for it, which is totally optional. And then those supportive services can be directly related to that development. Okay. However, this supportive services grant that is going out at the end of March is just, give me a second, Margaret, is just for supportive services and is not affiliated with any particular development. But therefore, you've got to serve the whole community, okay? And it can't just be agency specific, which is why we have the affirmative marketing piece that we talked about. Okay, Margaret, try and go off mute. And if you can't, then I will just have to figure some out here and shift things out. So let me know. Meeting options. I may have to figure that out. Just give me a second. Okay. Yep. You won't be able to talk. Hold on a second. Okay. Just give me a second, Margaret. Now try to unmute yourself. Okay. Let me see if I can unmute you. For some reason, oh, there we go.
I'm sorry, I'm on two devices because on my laptop, the slides is not showing. But I'm trying to formulate my question and just to get clarity. So this is a reimbursement grant. In other words, you have to have the funds in order to do what you're doing prior to getting funds. Is this correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so with our agency, I'm from Chosen Vessels. We already have a food pantry where we don't have any governmental funding as of yet. I told you yesterday that everything that we do it out of pocket through the tithes and the offerings of our church. So therefore, we're experiencing great needs where people are needing rental assistance, people are homeless and they're needing just different things. And we are already trying to do that. So how can, or maybe you can tell me, how can we stretch what we're doing with what we don't have to get what we need? If that makes sense.
No, I get that the reimbursability makes this not ideal. So I am not going to at all dissuade you from applying. And I would be very honest around what the capacity of your agency is, especially around the fact that you guys have basically self-funded everything that you've given out from your program. So I would definitely state that. How things are currently structured is for reimbursability. That's just the way it's been structured. However, I've been briefly told that if there's a way that we need to work something out to maybe get things started, there could be some options there. Okay. But we need to know your full capacity. So if you want to apply, which I highly encourage, make sure that you're including the kind of the capacity for what you have. And so we may be able to front some money to get started. I can't guarantee that. I still have to talk with like I said, we're still kind of structuring this piece out for us because we're going to be a little bit different. But there may be some ways to work that out, but I cannot guarantee that at that time. But it's free to apply. All it does is take a little bit of time, maybe a lot of time, depending on how many things you've written so far. But applying is going to be something that you can go ahead and put forth. And if it's possible, then you may be able to get funded. And so that, but right now, the main structure is a reimbursable grant. So I'm not going to, I need to be fully honest around that piece. So, and the awards will be made. The question is, when will the awards be made? They're going to be, we're receiving the grants back April 25th. And so it's probably going to be mid-May. So we're going to want to get these awarded fairly quickly. But I think it just depends on how many people apply and how many agencies apply. So that's a good question. Okay, so I'm going to move forward. Again, for expanding emergency solutions grant applicants, you really do need to meet all the ESG requirements. So I hope that you've been attending. Oh, absolutely, Margaret. You're welcome. So be sure to attend those ESG webinars, and there's going to be a bunch coming up, and we're releasing our grant alongside of what ESG is doing. Oops, I did not need to do that. The applicant can provide be sure to be able to provide additional documentation if we request it. So there may be some additional questions that we have based on the ESG type of application requirements. And I'm going to walk through kind of the full application. We're not asking you to complete an ESG application for us, but we're going to be mimicking a lot of what ESG has. And so it'll look really familiar. Additional eligible applicants for all new organizations. And I know this may look really small. But this is also in the NOFO that is out for public comment right now. So really the biggest thing that we've shifted for most of the agencies is instead of 3 to 5 years of experience, we're only asking you to have 1 year of experience. And that's really assisting vulnerable individuals and families who are a part of the 4 qualifying populations. So, and we're going to go into some of that detail as we go on. So that's really the biggest thing. And you really do have to be an organization in Georgia that has all of the 501c3 pieces, that you're eligible to do business in the state, and that you have all of those financial accountability pieces that are really important. So just make sure that, you have been kind of moving toward operating more and more robustly over the year plus that you've been in operation. Because I know I'm excited that there are a lot of new agencies out there. And that's one of the things that we really want to do is be able to help agencies grow in their capacity and be able to do more of this type of funding and have access to it. So then that way we're able to help build the capacity of Georgia for being able to give out more services. So these are the possible supportive services that you can request. I do believe I tried to yesterday, and I think I put it into the chat. Hold on a second. I think it's the list of the services that are available. And so basically, this is everything that is out of the, it's the breakdown, supportive services breakdown. Great. And so it's everything out of our regulations. So it is very specific around what you can and can't do. It's at the top of the chat. It's a PDF, so please be sure to download that. And it goes into detail about what you can do, what you can ask for in this funding. Our priorities are mainly going to be outreach to support our coordinated entry efforts throughout the state. And so if you are a region and or county and or city, so multiple counties or a county or a city that's wanting to expand your homeless outreach, this is an opportunity for you to have funding for that. If you are already doing outreach for people who are unhoused, then this is not your funding. So if you're already receiving that funding, or you've already really started to build up your coordinated entry system, unfortunately, you can't have access to this. It's really for new potential entities. So that's just something to be aware of that we're really wanting to have a focus on. We also have financial assistance costs. So that includes rental application fees, security deposits, utility deposits, moving costs, first and last month's rent, and then also the short and medium term financial assistance for rent. So that's being able to be consistent, almost kind of like a tenant-based rental assistance. Everything from short term, 3-6 months, up to 2 years. So that's kind of what we were thinking as far as options and main focuses that have been highlighted from our Office of Homeless and Special Needs. So we look to them to see what those priorities should be. So let's talk about the application workbook. And I've made a few tweaks to this and added a few things while I've been putting this together for today. I can't guarantee that there aren't going to be a few more tweaks when it's officially published on the 31st. However, it's not going to be anything huge that you guys are going to need to prepare for. I don't want to shock y'all. So that's just be aware that there may be a few tweaks to this, but for the most part, this is how it's going to look. The first tab of the workbook, so this is in Excel, is just an overview. And so really what this does is it ties your workbook to your eCivis Zengen submission. So we have multiples. It's going to be the computer software-based that's online or cloud-based system that you're going to be submitting documentation information and then uploads. And this would be one of the uploads. Okay. Excuse me. So the organization name, your project title, the contact person, their title, their direct phone number and their email, and then just a quick overview of the services that you're requesting. Now, we're not going to lock any aspect of this particular workbook, and no tab will be or worksheet would be locked. The only thing that we ask is that so you can manipulate it, but just don't delete anything. You can add. So if you're requesting 4 or 5 different supportive services, you absolutely can add boxes to the bottom. But again, we are going to be looking at capacity. And if your agency has had kind of a track record of being able to do maybe many different services at once, I appreciate getting excited about what this opportunity can hold, but also we know that we've got to spend this money down quickly. And so having the capacity to do that well is something that we're going to be looking at as well. So just be aware of that. The next thing is referral to supportive services. So again, looking at that first part of the diagram that I showed you and how that affirmative marketing piece, this shows us that you will be affirmatively marketing to everyone. Now, and I'm going to explain something because it's not going to make sense, but I want to make sure that we have the documentation for HUD. Let's just say the main service that you're giving out is McKinney-Vento services. So you're primarily servicing individuals who are unhoused, okay? And they're the only ones who are going to qualify for the service that you want to render. I would still like it if you would put down the agencies in the area that you could market to in order to make sure that you're reaching all 4 qualifying populations. Because HUD most likely is going to ask. And I know that it probably may not be relevant to the supportive services that you're giving out. And it's going to be like, Lona, why are you asking us to add all this information? And it's going to be because HUD is probably going to ask for it. And so sometimes things like this just don't make sense. So I appreciate all the logic going on in all of the brains right now. But we want to make sure that we're just honoring what HUD put together. And sometimes it doesn't always make the most sense. So, but they're also looking at a lot of agencies doing all of this all at once, and they have requirements that they have to meet too, and boxes that they have to check to make sure that we're all abiding by what they are requiring. So please let us know the agencies in your area that you're going to be referring people to. We also want to know if you're an active member of your local coordinated entry system. And so that would be something to add. And then in addition to that, we want you to attach a map of where these 4 agencies are located in proximity to yours. If you are essentially the agency that has access to all of the particular qualifying populations, it would be good to have at least a few other agencies in there, because then it would look like you're just referring all your own people to that service, and you cannot do that. You have to be able to open it up to the community. So please put all the agencies down. You don't have to put multiple agencies for each. You can just put one, but we need to know all of the referring agencies to that service. So if you're giving out rent, we need to know all the people that you can advertise that you're giving out rent to in the area. That could be your local community service board. If you are not the community service board, it could be your local community action agency. It could be your family connections, public health. There are lots of different options out there that you can add to this list. So just make sure that you are, considering who will be going to those agencies, and then adding to them, adding to here what agencies those are. And then you don't have to necessarily sign an MOU with this particular funding. However, we won't be sad about it. Okay. And we may eventually ask for an MOU to be signed between you and that agency. So then that way we know that there is an understanding and that they know that they're going to be getting your marketing on the particular availability of the service. But at this point, we're not going to be asking for those MOUs, but we may in the future. It's really important for the rental housing and non-congregate shelters out there. Those would need to have an MOU. But for supportive services, it's not going to be quite as rigid. Okay. Okay, that said. Next, this is everything that you guys want to spend money on. You notice that there to the right is an optional match total. We're going to talk about matches because I absolutely just said a few minutes ago you don't need a match, and you don't. It is an optional thing. But again, if you're able to provide a match amount, that means that you have a broader capacity than if you're not able to provide a match amount. And so putting that up as an option of what you could match is a good thing. Okay. I know it's a pain in the neck, and it could look like a lot of different things. It could look like your volunteer hours. It could look like maybe a CDBG grant or something like that. We just want to know the capacity that your agency has in order to give the services out. Okay, so this is the full list of what you can do. We do want you to delineate what amount for each. And now that I'm thinking about it, and I added it to my list before, is that that's probably going to be separated into several years. So this is just kind of a cursory way of looking at it, but it'll probably be an annual thing that you guys can add there. Okay. So just know that it'll be grant years that it'll be stating that you would want the money for. Okay. Halfway through. 23 slides out of 43. We're almost there, guys. We have about another hour and 15 minutes. This is just the breakdown. This is exactly out of the ESG workbook. So I have not shifted anything from there, except that I probably changed up the Excel spreadsheet a little bit. Not content, just format. Yeah, thanks for asking that, Anne. For this, what I'm saying is that when you guys get it, when you guys download it on the 31st, it may look a little different, and there will be additional columns for additional years. I just realized while we were going through this, I'm like, oh, we need to add another column for every year. So it'll just be expanded when y'all see it. But all that list of service costs will be there. Does that make sense? I'm gonna wait for a thumbs up or a woohoo or yes, definitely. Okay, cool. Thanks. So, and again, this is the optional match sources. It's great if you can show that you can potentially provide a match, but it's not required. This is where you want to disseminate your services. So this is a basic just site location. It does not have, you don't have to have multiple sites. It can just be one. So we are not particular about this. We do ask for the city, zip, and county, and then if you're currently funded by DCA. So it's just very basic. And some agencies have part of their program and services that are funded by DCA. So one site may be funded and another site may not. So that's why it says that there. Then your board member list, there's way more than just 2 little blocks that goes into detail on. Again, this just goes through their qualifications. This is an exact replica of what we have for our ESG program. And so if you can go ahead and complete this for your board members, that would be great. And then also for your program staff. So this is just, and these are who are going to be, so for program staff, that's who are going to be disseminating the funds, who's going to have access, who's going to be, you know, and that's everything from, it's pretty much everyone who will be charged for the program staff to be a part of, you know, to be giving out the services. And there is up to, and that's the other thing I need to add in the budget, is you can take up to 10% admin costs for this particular, for this supportive services grant that's separated from everything else. We haven't quite figured out what it's going to look like for non-congregate shelter and rental housing, but for this separate supportive services grant, you can be up to 10% admin. Okay. And that'll be in the updated budget that y'all are going to get on the 31st of March. Okay. Then to the point of referring people, making sure that you have affirmative marketing where you're at. This is just to make sure that you're aware of additional agencies to serve the individuals who are coming to receive the supportive services and any other referrals you can give them. This essentially is a worksheet just to kind of get you thinking if there's additional services out there that should be referred to the individuals who are getting served with HOME-ARP, that you may not be able to provide that service, but there's someone else out there who may be able to. This is just kind of all in proximity. We would like a map of just the proximity of the agencies around your agency as well and who you're working with. And so this, you guys should already probably have a lot of this information already. So I'm figuring that this will not be a super heavy lift. So it was just a list of the agencies in the area that you can also refer HOME-ARP participants to if they have additional needs. And I think someone may be off mute. And I don't know if that's intentional or not. Okay, I'm gonna mute them. So next are the additional documents. So the workbook is done and going through each of the tabs there. This is really pretty much directly out of the ESG application. And if you're a brand new agency to DCA, I'm hoping that you have most of these things. If there's something that you're missing, we may be able to kind of work that out a little bit, but for the most part, all agencies should have all of these things and can upload them with your application. So that's your list of board members, your 501c3 status or 501c4, your list of organizational staff, your financial audit or management letter from a recent audit, um, or any kind of financial background the last year that you had your finances reviewed. Some of you may not be receiving, or excuse me, receiving and spending enough money to have an audit be something that you have to do. So if you have your financial oversight, the main thing that you have happening every year, that's what you can include: minutes from your last 3 board meetings, articles of incorporation, organizational narrative. That's kind of important, but we're going to talk about the narratives in just a minute. So this is just kind of a little bit of what we discussed with the workbook, but also, some additional pieces like your last 3 board meetings, things like that. And I think we have a question. Pulling it up. Are we able to use funds for hotel motel as a temporary shelter while locating permanent housing? That's a good question, Anne. This funding can actually be permanent housing, technically. When we were asking our HUD TA about having separate TBRA, they said actually the supportive services funding can be like a tenant-based rental assistance option. So there can be kind of long-term assistance for that permanent housing. So instead of putting someone in a temporary housing situation, putting them just in a permanent housing situation may be the best course of action, and to be considered. But the temporary piece, I think there can be something that is a bit more temporary, short term is what it says in the requirements. And so I would look at that PDF that Jody put into the activity breakdown as far as, and I'm pretty sure it can get pretty granular as far as something that would be considered more of like a sheltering type scenario. But again, this is really helping people move out of homelessness into housed. So, and going from unhoused to housed. So, and I'm looking here quick. I pulled it up. That's why I'm saying that. So under short term, it's on page 6, subject to following. And I haven't really done a deep dive into this, so please forgive me. Short term means up to 3 months. So that would be the I don't think hotel motel is something that they encourage, though. So we'll have to look at it a little bit more. If you want to look directly at our regulations, it's there in that PDF. It's a copy paste that we did for that, so that way you guys knew exactly what HUD's requiring. And it has all the 24 CFR notes in there as well. So I do believe there is short-term payments, and I do believe that we could master lease. So if there is a master lease option that you guys want to do too, that could be something to consider, that you may want to consider as a short-term option to help individuals transition into a more permanent shelter situation. Shelters would be more acceptable. Yes, probably. This funding is really to help people being able to get stable long term. So a hotel motel is just not, it's way too temporary for kind of for what this particular funding really wanted to do. Okay. So, but we can look at it a little bit more, and I will put that in my note. But I would probably steer away from hotel motel though. Okay. We do have a shelter it's a question. We do have a shelter in our community. We do not have a shelter in our community. Housing is limited and a hotel might be needed while we wait for a unit to open up. And that may be part of the short-term piece to consider. And then also with the master leasing. So if you master lease something, that means that you are essentially the leaseholder for a apartment complex, you're a leaseholder for a unit. And then what would happen is that you can move people in and you could use that as like a sheltering kind of situation until you move someone into a more permanent situation. So that may be something to consider. Look through the regulations and see if you can find your answer. If you can't, then what we may need to do is find some other options for you. Or maybe what you can do is use the HOME-ARP funding to maybe loosen up some other funding in your agency. You can put that towards the hotel motel funding, and then HOME-ARP can cover something else. But you'd have to be cautious about that because you cannot duplicate services and kind of use HOME-ARP funds to usurp what you've done in the past. So it's kind of I would really look at your program design for what you're requesting funding for, and then put it up against those regulations that we have. Okay. So organization and capacity considerations. The extent of which your organization utilizes networks to avoid duplication of housing services, it's going to be a consideration. That participation is appropriate. Provider groups and continuums of care, that you are participating in those types of groups and agencies. That you really have sound operating procedures, accounting policies, and controls. So we are going to be looking at your policy and procedures that you have established, just to make sure that you have oversight, not only of your finances, but over your staff, making sure that your eligibility and that your tenant protections are there, and participant protections and things. So just making sure that you have processes in place. The presence and accuracy of financial management systems, accounts, funds, reports, tax returns, things like that. Unrestricted financial resources are available to the agency. That's just kind of nice to have, just in case with the reimbursable grant situation, in case an issue comes up. And we all know random issues that we can't even think of at the time will sometimes arise. And then organizational and financial policy control, stability, and capacity. So these are all things to really consider when applying, because again, these are federal funds. We, on one hand, really want to open up the capacity for the state and being able to help agencies who've not had access to federal funds start to have access to those. But we also need to be aware of the controls and situations and, making sure that we're following all the rules and guidelines that HUD puts in place. So just, consider everything. And like I said before, I think it was yesterday, maybe it would be really smart to have a smaller grant. So maybe $100,000 over the course of 3 years. That may be a quick consideration. So it's around $30,000 a year. That may be the best capacity for your agency now. Okay. So just be able to think about what you can handle, because we've also seen agencies that have, for whatever reason, received way too much money. And especially we saw a lot of that with COVID for a lot of different agencies. And it's really hard to put everything in place and spend it down rapidly. So we also had a question. Do you know if housing choice vouchers will be available to assist these clients? So that is different. Housing choice vouchers are going to be available to the rental housing group that's going to be submitted on Monday for the rental housing NOFO. So those project-based voucher applications will be available with that. For this particular funding, it is not attached. They're not in tandem at all. However, if you are applying for the rental housing NOFO, that's due on Monday, not this supportive housing NOFO, which is due April 25th, then the supportive services that you have the option to ask for with the rental housing NOFO will have those housing choice vouchers a part of it, and it'll be project-based vouchers, not HCV. And then, so does that feel like I'm trying to explain? Jody, am I making sense? Please give me a thumbs up if I'm just confusing the group more. Is it?
No, you're
am I
absolutely
okay?
making sense. Yeah,
Okay, good.
absolutely.
Okay. So for housing choice vouchers like tenant-based rental assistance, it is not available in addition to our supportive services here. However, our supportive services have types of funding that mirror tenant-based services like an HCV. So the short-term to longer term or medium-term housing assistance that you see on page 6 that I talked about before, that is like a TBRA, a tenant-based rental assistance, or something kind of like a housing choice voucher, just shorter term. It's not permanent housing, but it's semi-permanent housing. So that's a long explanation for all of that. So I hope that helps explain it, Anne. Okay, moving on to the next thing, eCivis and Zengen. So these are the kind of main 5 questions that are going to be asked for the organizational narrative. It is very similar to the ESG questions that are asked as the narrative. So the big thing is just summarizing your history, your background, providing housing and or services for the 4 qualifying populations, which is essentially are people who are unhoused all the way to over cost burden in their rent, and everyone in between. And so what's the mission of your organization? So just really establishing that there is no mission drift, that it is along with what you're already doing. So of the applicant's agency's total work, how much directly relates to the 4 qualifying populations? And so again, just making sure that everything is aligning. Does the applicant agency have a recent strategic plan that's been approved from your board of directors? And then describe the board, the staff, the community involvement in that particular strategic plan, the applicant's agency's executive leadership, your board of directors, your program staff, the governing authority for your agency, key responsibilities of your board members, qualifications of the applicant agency's executive leadership, qualifications of your staff. So this just kind of goes into very specific, some details around your agency and what you do. And then the name and title of the person who's assigned to oversee your financial records. And so then that way, if we need to reach out to them, we can. We also have just some basic information around compliance. So that would be coordinated entry. So if there is a system in your area, how you're participating, if you're participating in the Homeless Management Information System or HMIS, which I probably should have spelled out there, ensuring equal access for families, gender identities, people with different abilities. So just making sure that you're able to provide access to everyone, kind of similar to the making it's escaping me anyway. So just making sure that there's equal access to all the protected classes. That's the word I'm looking for. Fair housing, making sure that if you are wanting to house individuals, that it is done according to the Fair Housing Regulation, limited English proficiency or LEP, and then also VAWA, which has to do with domestic violence and those requirements. So just making sure that those compliance pieces are thought of and met. Project design. Big things. So this is something that I really hope you all sit with for a little bit. Community need, again, that data piece is really important for your application. You don't need a formal needs assessment from a third party, but you do need to show that your community has need for that particular supportive service, because heaven forbid you ask for a specific supportive service, you get it, and then you can't give it out. So we need to show that there is a need in the community for that particular service. Qualifying population eligibility. So the steps that you're going to be taking to qualify someone who is a part of the 4 QPs. And actually, now's the time, Jody. We're going to put a clinic into the chat. We highly recommend that you guys take a look at it. It's from HUD. And we had all gone through it because we've gone through all of their trainings online. And we were like, this is phenomenal. So just making sure that you know that these, that there's a specific way to document qualifying populations. And so that's one thing to start. We're also going to be doing our own trainings on qualifying populations and documenting them. And we're going to have our own forms and such, but this kind of gives you an idea of what you need to do for third-party documentation, just to ensure that you're, checking all the boxes and dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's. Ensuring that there's low barrier and housing first mindsets around the supportive services, service delivery steps, and what it will, all the steps you'll have to do in your process in order to disseminate the service that you're asking for. Improving participant income, that's something to always consider, and helping people leave your agency better than when they came in. Getting access to mainstream benefits, post-discharge care, so what happens after they're released from your program, and you follow up with them on 30, 60, 90, 120 days. Is that something that your agency does? Ensuring that there's not a duplication of services within your agency, but also outside in your community. And then the goals and projected outcomes for the project participants based on the relevant service activity. So what you're expecting to see is the goal at the end of receiving the service. Other project information is organizational policies and procedures, policies and procedures specific to the project in this application, like we stated before, any formal termination or eviction process for participants. So how would you end service if it needs to be ended, especially something that's maybe not it's not at a time that is natural, but may need to happen nonetheless. That does happen on occasion, and what your agency will do in order to move through that. Grievance procedures for participants, appeal procedures for termination and eviction, and grievance decisions, and who they're going to talk to in order to move forward with that. Does your agency agree to create any of the items listed above? And that would be for new agencies if it currently does not have it upon award. And so and when you plan to establish that information. And so just making sure that if you don't, for whatever reason, have these policies and procedures, that you can go ahead and initiate those if you don't have them, and how soon those would be in place. So this is just a general grant portal overview. If you're not familiar with eCivis, I'm hoping that most of you are. We have some more specific information around that, and I know that ESG is going to be doing some of the trainings around that. If you need more information on getting set up with eCivis and Zengen in order to submit your application, just let us know. So we're going to go ahead and send out that email with the links to eCivis on the 31st of March. You're going to have about 4 weeks to complete the application. All components are going to, like I said, open on Monday, March 31st, and they're going to close on April 25th at 5 p.m. And just some things to consider is all applications will be completed and submitted in eCivis. Users will be able to save work and log back in later if you really want to, which I highly recommend, just to make sure that at the last minute on the last day, you're not trying to upload and save everything all at once. And then it's going to be more important than ever to save often after uploading documents and answering your questions. So once you're in, just make sure that you're constantly saving and updating everything. And I always recommend kind of writing everything out in Word and then just cutting and pasting it to your software system. That way you not even copy and paste it to the application. So then that way you always have some sort of documentation in Word or whatever, or Google Docs or whatever you're using. And that's always permanent. So that's a little trick and hack that I always use. So I hope that helps. Next. Okay, guys, we're almost done. We're going to have about 30 minutes of additional conversation. Some more hints. So required documents are uploaded individually. This gives applicants another chance to verify that they have all the correct documents before finally submitting. And all required documents will be uploaded within the profile, application, and budget components. So as we do the final piece here, this is another direct cut and paste from our regulations and our Notice 2110. This is just the record keeping. So it kind of gives you an idea of what we're going to be asking for. The main records are just some basic demographics for the most part that we're going to ask for on each household. How many people are living in the households, what particularly you're giving to them, and then some other demographic information. I think it includes race, and I think it includes how many people are in the household, and I think there's a few more things actually for our IDIS, which is the HUD, the main HUD software that we use to give them all of our data. So there's going to be some additional pieces. And reminders, there can be no preferences or limitations for certain groups. So we've already gone through that. Just remember that. HOME-ARP funds need to be open to households who meet the definition of a qualifying population, as well as the service offered first come, first serve. And remember about that wait list. It must be maintained. Affirmative marketing, like we showed you before, has to be made for any supportive service given. A plan will be required to ensure that all 4 qualifying populations will be made aware of the services offered. The household cannot already be receiving the services through another program, so no duplication. Just please remember that. And needs assessments will be required to show the demand of the service funding requested. And we have a question in the Q&A. I have a question regarding organizations that are not currently partnered with DCA coordinated entry staff. Should we work on establishing these partnerships? D more. Okay. My computer wasn't agreeing. During the application process, or will assistance be provided to facilitate the partnership once we are awarded with the grant? That is a great question, and we are really excited that you're asking it. So that is very, there's many levels to that question. So I think your name is pronounced Sasha, but if it's not, you're going to have to correct me. First of all, if the area does or doesn't have coordinated entry. So if it does have coordinated entry, establishing the partnership now is great. We would highly encourage you to get started if you have a coordinated entry in your area with that particular system, because they can always use more people a part of the system in order to build it up and make it more robust. So if you do have a coordinated entry system already, definitely get involved now. If you don't have a coordinated entry system yet, I would then put that into your application about something that you do want to do. So I would put that into your application. And then once you guys, if you are awarded, and there's no guarantee, but we will definitely take the fact that you want to start a coordinated entry system, a part of your application, take that into consideration. Then assistance will be provided to help facilitate it. And even for whatever reason, I can't make any guarantees. There's no 100% right now. And if you don't happen to get funded, we still want to know that you want to get something started, and the coordinated entry staff will still reach out to you. So definitely let us know any of the above. So get involved if it's already there. If it's not, that you want to start one, and then we'll start reaching out to you and making that happen no matter what happens. Okay. So I hope that answers all of your questions. So now we are over all of our particular information. This is our website, and I think you guys should be able to, I think I linked it, maybe not. Oops, no, I didn't link it. But below is the website. We also included the website for the, and it's further up, but here is our website for the supportive services grant that you can get all the information. And then I will put our website here, and then there's also on that website a link to our listserv, so you can get even more information about HOME-ARP. And so that is, those are the processes that you have there. And we're going to open it up for questions. That's the three of us, along with Laura Ann, who's our main supervisor. And this will be available on our website as well. And by the way, everyone, our IT department is the bomb, and we got that YouTube uploaded yesterday from our meeting earlier yesterday. So all of that is up on the website as well. So definitely check that out about the public comment for non-congregate shelter and supportive services. So now at 4:16, we have 45 minutes of questions. Holy cow, that's a long time. I can't believe I talked for an hour and 15 minutes. All of you poor people. And so we're gonna, I'm gonna stop sharing here. Let's see, how do I stop sharing? I think we're doing a new thing where we're kind of sharing through this whole special thing with Teams. Oh, there we go. There's my stop sharing guy. Okay, stop presenting. So there we go. So we're here to answer questions, everyone. If you have a question, you can put in the chat. You can raise your hand and go off mute. You can put something in the Q&A. If there's something specific that you want to point out in some documentation, you could even share your screen. And then we can pull up some of our information as well. So please take a moment and let us know your questions. And what we may do is, if we don't have any questions, just to let y'all know, if you want to log off, we're going to keep recording, and we may just sit here for a little while up until 4:30 or 4:45, just to see if anyone else logs in for questions. But if there aren't any questions, we're good with that too. I hope that means that we're thorough enough. Good Lord, we try to be. Anything stick out to you, Jody, as far as, I know you guys are working through the qualifying population manual and all those different things. Anything stick out to you?
Well, there was yesterday someone asked about the needs assessment and if that was something that they had to reach out for a third party to do. And you told them they did not have to do that, that a lot of people use the Census Bureau to gather their information. But I just wanted to share as well, you had mentioned community commons, and it's not lost on me that a lot of these agencies may already use community commons, but I was
Yeah.
just going to kind of drop that link in the chat.
Perfectly. I agree.
So if they didn't, then there it is, and they can take a look around and see if that wouldn't help them with that needs assessment.
That's perfect. Thanks.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
Community Commons is great. And they offer a lot of different access to a lot of different just informational databases out there. So it's really a great look through that y'all may have. So yeah, thanks for saying that.
Mhm.
And Candace, I know since you're new, is there anything additionally that you want to just add?
No, I actually don't have anything. I'm still enjoying learning more about the program and how we can be of service to the community.
Okay. Awesome. Didn't know if anything stuck out to you from all the new things you're learning. So, and we also have a question that just came in. How long will it be before we can get this presentation via email? So it will be uploaded to the website probably by Monday, maybe even as soon as tomorrow. So we just have to work with our marketing communications team to get everything uploaded. So it won't be really sent via email. If anything, we'll send out a MailChimp that says, hey, look at the website, and everything's uploaded. So it should hopefully be no later than Monday. Good question. Oof. Yeah, the funding is really great, some great opportunities. Trying to think of some additional pieces. What we'll do too is I think we'll go ahead and put a list that specifies in the appendices for both rental housing and non-congregate shelter. We mention like all of the 4QPs and the specifics of those of those populations. And what we'll do is we'll not only upload the list of supportive services to the site, like that PDF that we have. I think it's already there actually, but we'll also upload a PDF of all the 4QPs. So that way you guys can have like a very visual piece of what the 4 qualifying populations looks like. So excellent. And actually, while I'm thinking about it, I'm gonna add show one new comment. Oh, good. I'm glad you enjoyed the presentation, Johnny. Thank you for that. We certainly work hard to get all the information out to everyone as much as possible. That's for sure. So I feel like you're going to say something, Jody.
There's a new question in the Q&A, but it went to the very top. So you just have to scroll at the top. Sasha, if that's how you pronounce your name, if not, I apologize. Could you please provide further clarification regarding the restriction on organizations submitting applications for services they are already providing? Does this mean organizations should review the activity breakdown to identify services they are not currently offering, but that align with their focus area, so they still offer high quality assistance under that service category, utilizing their expertise in order to serve the community effectively?
It's a really big question. Okay. So I'm going to pull up give me a minute, Sasha. I think, let us know if we're not pronouncing your name correctly. So this is the regulation. You guys could see the breakdown of everything here. Supportive services may be provided to individuals and families who meet the definition of a QP of this notice and who are not already receiving these services through another program. Okay. So again, it would be like at risk of homelessness, but they may already be getting rental assistance, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but let me find another. Okay, so it's the child care example. It's a perfect example. So if they're receiving child care assistance from another program in the community and they're not paying for it on their own, that would be something that would be considered a duplication. Okay. So I would recommend, in order to ensure that there's no duplication of services, that you either do a very different service than what your agency has provided. Okay, so there's no chance of a duplication as far as your agency goes. You are going to have to make sure that that is not being provided by another agency to that person. Or do something where you're getting a whole new group of people who are getting assistance for whatever you're providing. So not giving the same provision of services to the same group of people that you're already serving. So getting a new pool of applicants for that particular service. Okay. So do you see the differentiation? Either a whole new service that you've never provided before. So that way you can't duplicate it, at least within your agency, and you try not to duplicate it within your community. Or you do the same thing that you've done before, but you cannot give it to any of the old people. You got to get all new people in. So that's the first piece. Does this mean organizations should review activity breakdown to identify services they are not currently offering, but that align with their focused area? I think that's a really smart idea. I think for agencies have been wanting to kind of try something new and expand a little bit, looking at what your community needs through that needs assessment, and then what the capacity of your agency has in order to take on an additional type of service. I think this is a great opportunity. And you don't have to jump into anything really, really big. You can, modify it if necessary. And like I said, ask for a $100,000 3-year grant and use $33,000 a year. That may be a really good opportunity for you to try something new. So your next question is, so they still offer high quality assistance under that service category, utilizing their expertise in order to serve the community effectively and efficiently too, I'm sure. Yeah, so I would, again, utilize those needs assessments, even internally. External needs assessment. What does your community need as far as a service? What is a need not being met in your community? And then what is the capacity of your agency in order to meet that particular need, like through one of the supportive services that HOME-ARP offers? So that is a really, really great question. And I appreciate you thinking in that direction. And again, like I know that doing a needs assessment, especially, you have about a month and a half or so to fully do a needs assessment before everything's due on the 25th of April. And so, it's not a ton of time, but just to make sure that the services that you plan to offer are going to be utilized and utilized well and efficiently and effectively and completely. So that just, it's kind of it's a big question. Lots of questions there, but does that answer everything? Because since you just asked it 5 minutes ago, I've literally been talking for 5 minutes. So that's kind of ridiculous. I hope that answered your question, Sasha. Probably should get something to drink. So, and while I'm still sharing this, I'm going to pull this back up. You guys are seeing there's nothing being hidden as far as the seeing all of the PowerPoint. So are there any other questions? And Sasha, when you get a chance, I don't know if you're by your computer, but if you can just give us a thumbs up or yeah, that's great. I understand. Or if there's any additional questions that you want to ask to what you already asked. If we didn't clarify anything well, just let us know. Thanks for the thumbs up. We see you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are there any other thoughts or questions? About 9 people left, including those AI reading note things. I wonder how well those really take notes, how effective they are. I'm curious. Okay. Well, it's 4:30. I really don't think anyone else is going to hop on since it's been an hour and a half already. Guys, we're going to give it another 5 minutes or so. And if we don't hear from you, I think we're going to end everything. Do you guys have any specific questions around what you're wanting to do? I mean, this will be recorded so other people will be able to see it. But if you want to ask us any particular questions, you can ask now. This is the only way we really can answer those questions is in this type of format. So just FYI, we have to go into a quiet period. Awesome sauce. We got a hand up. Go ahead and McKellen, if you want to go ahead and take your go off mute and ask us a question, please do.
Hi there, how are y'all doing?
Good. We're on fire.
Yeah, we're
like-
really excited. So I work for Chatham Savannah Authority for the Homeless. We are the lead collaborative applicant here for Georgia 507 COC. And we're looking to apply for the SSO grant, but I do have a question. So we're currently in the process of building Dundee cottages, which are going to be 40 units for families with children and individuals exiting their homeless experience. And we wanted to make sure because I just want to be very clear. So I understand. I'm our grant writer.
Okay.
That because we are the lead for the coordinated entry program, as well as for HMIS, that we would still be eligible to apply for the money since we're doing it for case management, versus doing it for homeless outreach.
Yeah. I mean, because case management, I think there's two options of case management. So let me double check that though.
Okay.
That's a very specific question, which I really appreciate. So just give me a second.
Yes, ma'am. And it would be, I think, probably case management specific towards the Dundee cottages, which serves all 4 QPs, because it's not just people exiting homelessness, it's people also experiencing housing instability in our current area because Chatham County is going through a housing crisis right now.
Right. So okay, that's a few things then.
Okay.
So you'd be able to offer it on site, but technically those services would need to be offered to the whole community. They can't be tied to just
Got it.
those
Okay.
Dundee Cottage individuals.
Okay.
So
Okay, perfect.
that's the first thing.
Okay.
Trying to pull this up. Oh, because I'm looking at the wrong thing. That's why. So that's the first piece that you would need to note.
Okay.
The second thing is that I think you can go ahead and see here. Where's your point breakdown? Case management. I think because I know that there is case management noted under outreach services, absolutely. But it's also, if you look on page 4, it just says the costs of assessing, arranging, and coordinating, monitoring the delivery of individualized services to meet the needs of the program participants. So yeah, it's a McKinney-Vento. It's tied to that funding technically, I believe.
Okay.
But I think it could be open to everyone, if I'm going to be honest. It's not really specific to, because it's also homeless prevention. It's both of them. So it could be probably given to everyone. So the only thing that would be different is if you guys applied for outreach.
Got it.
And then put case management under outreach. That would be a no-no since you guys are your own COC, your own coordinated entry. So, but if you apply for case management alone, that would be possible. But in addition to that, you can't offer case management to people that you've already offered case management to, or who've already received case management from another program.
Got it.
So that would be the only thing that would be a little bit off. Because I'm guessing you guys may have done case management before.
We currently do case management. Yes, ma'am.
So then it would have to be people who haven't ever received case management before that you would have to serve. That's the duplication piece that makes it a little awkward. So what you may want to also consider is maybe there's something on site like a childcare, maybe some additional financial services like helping people move in. So if you need moving costs for new people coming in, helping them with the utility deposits, helping them with, let's see what else, utility deposits, first and last month's rent, those types of things you can do. But the caveat with that is it may not be able to just be at Dundee Cottages. That would be even moving them out of Dundee Cottages into their own place, their own apartment somewhere else. So
I guess my other question might be is, and you guys are probably well aware, eviction prevention money is really hard to come by in the state of Georgia, or just period, for a nonprofit. Is this money eligible towards eviction prevention?
Yeah, there is. Let me, I'm almost positive here. Hold on a sec. Because there is, hold on. Going all. Because this can do credit repair.
Okay.
And it can pay, hold on. Thought I had pulled this up separately. Because I know it can be things that are in arrears.
Okay.
And it talks about homelessness prevention. Would that not constitute as being the same thing?
Well, it says payment of rental arrears. HOME-ARP funds may be used for a one-time payment for up to 6 months of rent in arrears, including
So
a
eviction
late fees.
prevention.
They just don't call it that. Including
Got
a
it.
late fees for charges on those arrears if necessary for the household to maintain their existing housing, or for those without housing if necessary to remove a demonstrated barrier to obtaining housing. So the really cool thing around this is, yeah, you're not going to be duplicating that hardly at all, for one.
No.
For two, you have to remember QP4. That is helping people not return to homelessness.
Right.
That's a big piece, that QP4 piece. And so that is a big piece of, all those financial assistance needs.
So could we potentially do, could we do two things? Could we offer financial assistance to people who are moving into new housing units or housing units in our area? And then on the other end, could we also provide eviction prevention with the funding and do two of those things within the same program? Would that be something that's compatible?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're just trying, anything can help in our community. We're also applying for other funding through the HOME-ARP that's due on Monday with a developer, which we're really excited about partnering with them. So we're just trying to make it all make sense in our current COC, and the more funding we can get for our COC, the better. So, but thank y'all for answering my questions.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a good question. And yes, I really wish they would have used the word eviction though, because that's kind of not, it's not a happy word, but it's definitely one that you don't really think to look of payment of rental arrears all the time. So it makes it a little bit hard to
And
search,
eviction prevention's, that type of funding is just, it's really not available, unless you're going through private grants and foundations. So the fact that this is, we can use this money towards that would be it would be incredible for our CDC.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for answering my questions.
Absolutely. And just to let you know, just have that data. And I know that you're in the COC, so you can talk about how many people have come up who are in arrears.
Yes,
and you have difficulty paying that. And this is for everyone else who's on the call. And so, talk about what you've seen come through your agency. Give us numbers like in,
Yep.
January, February, and March, we had 12, 14 people come through, and each of them had $2,000 of, costs that need to be made up, and they were about to be evicted because they had that $2,000. And so had we just been able to pay that, that would have been good. So, just
We
putting
should,
that on
and
record.
we're the director for HMIS and coordinated entry. So
Okay. Yeah.
we have a lot of that information that's going to hopefully be helpful with the analysis piece of this grant. So thank y'all so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. And for other people out there too, since this is being recorded, if you happen to have that database information, or if you could pull it from HMIS, if you happen to be using HMIS, then definitely pull that information and what you've seen come through your diversion populations who you've diverted from homelessness. as well as those that may have been able to not be served because you didn't have the funding. So all those is considerations of data and need. So it is now recorded. So, okay, Tanea, go ahead and go off mute.
Okay, so I do have a question. So we have, and I'm from Chosen Vessels, as well. So we have quite a few memorandums of understandings where we have partnerships with licensed psychiatrists and psychologists to offer mental health counseling.
Right.
One of the things that's one piece. We also have the workforce development part where we have people that will come in and do training. Um, my question is for those specifically that are unhoused, if we find adequate housing, can this grant also allow for like furniture? Because we want to tackle like getting them the whole is designed to be self-sufficient and us to make sure that this is ongoing. So we know that a lot of people coming from unhoused, they have nothing. So going into a brand new apartment, even if it's the bare essentials of beds and bedding, if that's the bare minimum that the grant can provide would be great. And if not, have you heard of anything that's leveraging that source? Also, I think I saw on the website that there is a mental health grant that's being offered, or some type of supportive services grant that is being offered that I am going to go for as well, just to help us out because we do also have, like I said, we have people that are ready to go, and as much money as that we can get to make sure that all of the things that we want to do can be funded. That's going to help us tremendously. So,
So, several different things. First is furnishings, fixtures, and equipment, FFE type stuff, not covered by this grant. So we cannot pay for
okay,
beds
gotcha.
and things like that. It
Okay,
can pay for moving costs.
okay,
It can pay for, again, first and last month's rent, utility payments, but it doesn't feel like it can pay for anything that you can, carry.
okay,
So that's the first thing. To the mental health, though, it does state here on page 3 of what we put in the chat is mental health services eligible costs are the direct outpatient of treatment of mental health conditions that are provided by licensed professionals. So mental health
correct.
services are this is what it provides. So you can ask for that to be
Oh,
paid for.
oh,
Um,
awesome.
yeah, so it's in there. So that's what I'm saying.
Oh,
Um, yeah, so it's taking care of that. So this isn't a definition. This is a, hey, this can pay for that.
yay.
So
Mhm.
it may be that you use this to fund that particular thing, and
Okay,
then the money that's left over you can pay for beds with and bedding and
gotcha.
things like that. Again, got to be careful not to duplicate. You
Right.
can't, if someone's already receiving those mental health services, this money cannot supplant what you're already paying to
Correct.
continue
Okay.
paying that for them. It would have to be either new people
Okay.
or brand new services.
Okay.
So just make sure that you're kind of abiding by that piece. But
Gotcha.
other than that, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Um, any other questions? Sasha and Tanea, you've been asking some great questions today, so we're here for you. Like I said, you could ask us anything. It's just going to be recorded, so just know that.
Well, I have another question then if
Okay,
we're
go ahead.
asking it. So, because one of the things that, there's a little bit of fear. I keep trying to tell our group just calm down a little bit because I understand the fear for us being a new agency stepping out and receiving funding for the first time. I've been doing this over 20 years, just
Yeah.
in North Carolina, and now in Georgia. But So with this, and I do love the fact that you guys are welcoming in new agencies. I want to make sure that our narrative shows not only the things that we have done, but that we have the capacity to do what we are proposing to do. So when it comes to the staffing part, I know as far as they ask for, I guess, everyone that will be touching the money, so to speak. But is it helpful to list resumes or anything of those that will be providing the services or have agreed to provide those?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, just this is, I mean, with these things, it's kind of hard to find the good mixture between too much information and too little information.
Right.
Um, so I would definitely, I mean, there's the program, the list of who works for your agency that you can go ahead and delineate everything that they do. I would probably, um, more people who are directly involved in using the money, like big parts of it, I would definitely include their resumes, or
Okay.
maybe individuals who um, may have a lot of expertise to
Yeah.
bring. I don't think it's bad to know about that.
Okay.
So, but if it's someone who's unrelated but has a lot of expertise, I don't know if that's going to be super helpful. Um,
Right.
but um, but yeah, so I would include it, and just, I mean, just make sure that they're not 10-page resumes. I would probably get it down to
Absolutely.
1 or 2 pages,
Yes.
just in order to limit the amount of paperwork that we're going to have to go through. So just remember that we're going to have to read through everything.
Correct.
So,
Okay.
so I think it's also understanding everything needs to be readable and understandable. Um, I once read a grant that had all of the, like, they didn't finish their words. It was a weird, very weird grant. So, just making sure that it's legible and readable and, makes sense and enough information, but, 12 pages is probably not the best thing. So just make
Okay.
sure that
Okay.
you're being practical and logical when you're writing the
Okay.
grant.
Okay.
And just know that um, people are reading what you have to say.
Yes.
So just making sure that, it's something that we can understand, that we can, identify with and support, but also, being honest of where you guys are at and what you really want to do. And, I think that that's important too. So it's just, all of the above. So,
Let me ask you this, because I think you kind of answered it yesterday. That let's say I break down, for instance, the mental health component in the grant. Because I'm gonna kind of do a snapshot in the narrative so you can get a full understanding and a picture of everything. But let's say something in there is questionable, or you have a question of how that's going to happen. Would you automatically say, no, we will not approve that? Or would you come back and say, how are you going to do it? I guess that's kind of my question. Is there timing space for that?
yeah. I know you're not going to want to hear this, but it kind of depends.
Okay.
Like, if it's a threshold something, like if it's a legit, like, concern,
Hmm.
um, we probably would want to confirm or deny our concern in those areas just to make
Okay.
sure. But if you're able to show, not only through your words, but through, your financial oversight, through your board members, through your board meetings and your activity
Hmm.
level, those different things. So many ways to see how an agency works.
Okay.
If you can show through all those different things just what your capacity is, and then that your ask matches your capacity.
Okay.
So, for example, if you've had an operating amount every year of like $200,000, we'll
Mhm.
keep it small. And then you ask for like 3 million, we're going to be like,
Right.
no, that's really a smart ask,
Right.
but if you ask for $100,000 over the course of 3 years, which is $30,000, it ups it just a little bit. You're able to help maybe even only 10, 15, 20 more people. and households, but those people are going to be taken care of. They're going to be seen. They're going to be helped thoroughly. That's a good spending of the money. And it may be in an area that we may not serve. Like this may be the first time that these kinds of services are offered there. That's all going to be taken into consideration.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Perfect. Thank
Does
you
that
so
all make
much.
sense?
It does.
Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, cool. Those are good questions and good examples. So yeah, we don't necessarily want to do a ton of outreach, but there may be some times when we need to have some questions. And for something like this, we've not necessarily, had a grant quite like this before. It's similar to ESG, but it's a little different. Then you have the housing aspects to it. So we just want to make sure that we're giving as many people a chance as possible. And we'd be probably more apt to reach out to an agency that's brand new, just because we know that agency would be a little bit more unfamiliar with what to put into a grant versus an agency that's been doing this every year for ESG. And they may know, they kind of know the process and what to provide. So I think that's the other thing too. So. Okay. Yay, sharing the love. So, is there anything else, Tanae? You're the last person standing. I feel like we need to.
Yay, I won. No, I think you I think you guys have cleared up everything for me personally and our organization. I took a lot of notes. I'll always tap into the website at the end of the evening. In addition to doing this and being a program coordinator here, I'm also a catastrophe adjuster and I'm currently working in Massachusetts. So I do a lot.
That is a lot.
But
Good
yeah,
heavens.
but thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. I look forward to applying and I know that we will do what we plan on doing. So thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Excellent. Well, we appreciate you reaching out and having so many team members on the line. And yeah, we look forward to seeing your application.
Absolutely. Have a good night.
Excellent. Thanks, you
You
too.
too. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, and now we're going to ending the event.